Hello, and thank you so much for joining us today. The GCLS virtual series is welcoming you to the presentation, Optimizing the Book Review Experience. This panel is sponsored by Bella Books. Thanks again to Bella Books for sponsoring this presentation. Also, we'd like to thank you all for your continued support of our virtual series and of the GCLS in general. Donations are always welcomed and greatly appreciated. Donations can be made throughout the event and after. If you are catching this as a recording, you can make that donation at donorbox.org/GCLS-VS. These donations are used to cover the technical costs of the virtual series, so we can continue to bring you exciting sessions with relevant content. No donation is too small. So, how about we get started? I'm really grateful that you are here with me today. It's really wonderful to have you. Today, we are going to be talking through some ideas when it comes to optimizing book reviews from both a reviewer and a writer's perspective. To get started, let me ask the writers who are present a question, and feel free to share your thoughts with each other in the chat. Have you ever had a bad, hurtful, or deconstructive book review? It is par for the course when you're a writer, isn't it? Has anyone ever felt like giving up on writing because of a bad book review? I have to say, the first time that I considered giving up writing books was back in early 2013. 10 years ago, I almost stopped writing books because I have a hurtful, really mean review. I guess I was, maybe a little sensitive. But the reviewer was really mean. It felt like a personal attack from a bully. And she was, in fact, a bully. I felt like she had it out for me and wanted me to quit writing. I didn't even know her, yet she tried to tell me how to live my life by suggesting that I should never write again. Talk about bone crushing, right? Those are not the kind of things you want to read when you put a book out into the world. These were a few of her words. It really sounds like the author's personal journal or an exercise in writing therapy that the writer decided to loosely plug some half-assed characters into and attempt to string into a story. Literary self-gratification. So I can laugh and I can smile about this now because, well, it's been 10 years. But for anyone who has ever put a piece of themselves into a character, you might understand how this kind of a review cuts like a knife. That story was very personal to me. And so that's why I think it hurt even more. I put my heart into that story and into that character. I put my vulnerability onto the line. I'm a very sensitive person, but back in 2013, I was a new writer and I was uber sensitive. I was in the middle of writing my next book at the time. And when I read this review, I should say, I completely stopped writing. That review had me second guessing every single word that I had written up to that point. That is a lot of power that I handed over to a stranger. Now, even though the book received an average of 4 to 5 star ratings, some profoundly amazing reviews coupled into that, I I focused on that one star, the one and only of its kind. All the glowing reviews paled in comparison. I couldn't get past that hurtful review. Why do some of us do that? Why do we give more weight and power to the negative? It's not a healthy choice. And don't be mistaken, it is certainly a choice. We can choose what we give power to and what we don't. Now, back then, my sensitivity didn't allow for me to view the review with objective eyes. About a month into my pity party, yes, a whole month, a good friend pulled me aside to have an honest and caring conversation with me. She said to me, "Suzie, I know she hurt you, but is there anything that you can learn from this?" Something in that moment of friendship told me that I was safe to explore the possibility that maybe, just maybe, my ego had gotten in the way. I could feel my ego bringing me down, causing me to go into this self-protection mode. In that moment, I decided to drop my ego to peek and see if any of that review had merit. After a month, I felt strong enough to do that. I know some of you are like, "A month?" I'm like, yeah, it took me a month. Something kind of cool happens when you let go of your ego and you seek the lesson. Your brain lets go of the rigidity and it transforms into this flexible seeker, focused intently on finding solutions. Lo and behold, I found 3 valid points that I copied and pasted to a blank document. I let them sit there for a day or 2. When I went back to them, I saw them through fresh, objective eyes. Removing the initial emotion from a month ago, I was able to see some valuable pieces of information underneath her bullying that I could apply to my writing. And so I did. I learned over the years that feedback can help us get to a whole new level. So I decided at that point to seek out my most critical reviewers and ask them to beta read for me. Brave, right? Has anyone else done this? Put that in the chat if you have. Have you sought out the most critical reviewers to ask them to be your beta team? Of course, I did not ask the bully because I don't respect bullies. And there is a kind way to deliver feedback. A few of these people did say yes. Lucky me, because my beta manuscripts at that point became a sea of red after my new beta team completed their assessments. But that's when you want a sea of red before it goes public, so you can learn something and apply it. I believe that they helped me to learn my craft better. So my first piece of advice to anybody seeking it is never be afraid to ask for feedback. Don't be afraid of it. That is going to get you to the next level. Now, when I see bad reviews, I go on a journey, leaving my ego behind, and I seek the lessons that I can find from them. I view reviews with the idea that I'm a student of the universe, and I'm ready to apply what I learned to my next project. I still have a lot to learn, and I'm not afraid to admit it anymore. Back then, I thought I knew everything. But talk about eating a big slice of humble pie. It's the best thing you can do. Drop your ego. When reading reviews, I keep my friend's question in mind. Is there anything that I can learn from this? I also keep a good supply of chocolate in hand because, let's face it, that helps too. A lot. Those of you who are writers, realize this. when we put our books out in the public domain, we are setting them free to be consumed and analyzed, good or bad. We don't get a choice in that process after we hit the publish button. And we don't because it's not our choice to make how a book gets reviewed. It's the choice of the one reviewing it. And keep this in mind. Reviews are not usually written for the writer. I know, right? I say usually because, well, some reviewers do write for the writer. But in all fairness, reviews are written in most cases to serve the readers. I thank reviewer Jude Silberfeld. Not sure if Jude, if you're here today or not, but I want to thank you for reminding me of this when I put a call out onto social media last month, asking folks for the do's and don'ts of book reviews. Hey, Jude, I see you. Awesome. That was a really good reminder, so thank you. All this being said, book reviews hold tremendous power to both writers and readers. And that brings us to why we are here today, to talk through a few important things. By the end of today's session, you should be able to determine at least 3 elements to include in a book review. You should be able to list at least 3 things to avoid in a review. You should be able to identify a few ways to grow from a constructive review. And you should be able to recall a few techniques to not let negative reviews derail you, like the one I talked about derailed me for an entire month. So as we get into this content, I want you to think about the last time that you read a review of your work, if you are a writer, or the last time you wrote a review, if you are a reviewer. How did that experience make you feel? And I want you to share some of these thoughts in the chat with each other, because I think it's nice to have that interactive quality. How did that whole experience make you feel? Did you learn something from the experience? If you're a writer, did it derail you? Or did it lift you? And as a reviewer, did you feel bad if you didn't like the book and you wanted to offer an honest assessment of it? Because that's a tricky situation. So yeah, think these questions through as we go through this content today and share it with the people that are sharing this space with you. So our game plan for today is to present some helpful information, so we can kind of go through what book reviews, we can go through book reviews from a writer and a reviewer perspective. And thankfully, I have 2 fabulous guests that I'll be bringing on for a few minutes each so they can share their insights. We will hear from Rizzo and Karin Kallmaker. I'll be leaving about 10 minutes for question and answers, and then we'll wrap up the session at that point. I'll be looking at the Q&As at the end of the presentation just so that I can make sure I get through all the content first. But feel free to add those into the Q&A at this point. This is being recorded. Okay, so I'll be editing and uploading this to the GCLS YouTube channel tomorrow. If you are not subscribed yet, go ahead and subscribe so that you get notices every time we put a new video out, which is every time we do an event like this. All right, so a little bit about me before we get started. My name is Suzie Carr, if you don't know who I am. I've been with the GCLS since 2000 and maybe 13, 14. I was on the GCLS board of directors for a while there for about 4 years, and I love the organization and support it in any way I can. I am the writer of 14 Women Loving Women books, 4 nonfiction books on marketing, writing, and productivity. And I also love making book trailers for my fellow authors. I'm a video producer. And I'm a learning experience designer and have facilitated courses on various topics. Most notable, I should say, for this session is How to Write Your Novel, available on Udemy. And as I mentioned earlier, I am a woman who loves chocolate. And I do fall back on it when I need that pick-me-up. So enough about me. Let's get to the content. So I put a call out onto social media for thoughts on this topic of book reviews. I want to thank the folks who responded and offered their suggestions, specifically Carol Hutchinson, Angela Greenman, Elena Graff. I already mentioned Jude Silberfeld, Serena Bishop, and Lee Winter, and of course, Cindy and Karin. I've incorporated their ideas into what I'm about to present to you. So when I thought about how to present on this topic, I realized, hey, I'm presenting to folks who appreciate storytelling. So maybe I should use that technique. So let's take a journey together. A journey through the eyes of a writer that we'll name Sarah and a reviewer that we'll name Marcy. Sarah, she spent 8 months crafting a romance novel set in the beautiful forests of Vermont. She dedicated an hour, sometimes 2 hours a day, 5 to 7 days a week to sit her butt in the chair and write. She struggled to get into her character's head, like all writers do sometimes. She celebrated when subplots came together and worked magic. She lost sleep when she couldn't get a scene into shape. She said no to happy hours and game nights to iron out the kinks when they happened in her story. She put every ounce of her soul into this book. And when she finally finished the manuscript and revised it a few dozen times, because isn't that what we do, she took the suggestions of her beta team and her editing team to refine it into something that she was proud to share. When she hit the publish button and sent it out to the world, she did so with the intention of providing readers with an entertaining story about 2 women fallen in love. A month went by, and the reviews came in, and they were mostly positive. She was receiving 4- and 5-star reviews. She feels that she lived up to her purpose, providing value to readers through her story. Reviewers shared why they loved her book. Sarah thought, this could be super helpful to readers who want to know what made the book a good read to others. She sipped her tea and she smiled, satisfied that she had provided some value in the literary world. Shortly after this, Sarah discovered several new 1-star reviews on Goodreads. None of them offered an explanation. They were just stars, nothing else. She stared at the series of 1 stars and wondered, why did they rate it that way? Was the book too short, too long, not enough chemistry, too cheesy? Were there plot inconsistencies? What went wrong for the readers? Sarah will never know, and potential readers will never know. The star, without an actual review, left no context. She couldn't grow from that review, and readers really didn't get any value out of a star rating without any context. Another morning, she found a 3-star review. The reviewer, named Marcy, wrote, although the writing had many show versus tell and point of view issues, I thought the emotional vulnerabilities of the characters were extremely compelling and had me turning the pages. Now, although the show versus tell statement caused Sarah's heart to pinch a little bit, the fact that the reader appreciated the character building and felt compelled to keep turning the pages meant a great deal to Sarah. It softened the blow of the show-tell comment and the point of view comment. Maybe the reviewer was right. Maybe Sarah would read through her novel again and see where she could improve her writing. Sarah appreciated the reviewer's kindness and constructive feedback. This reviewer went on to offer a high-level synopsis of her book without giving away any spoilers with the climactic scene or the ending. She offered just enough to whet a potential reader's appetite. She also ended the review drawing a conclusion, giving more credibility to the review. She wrote, although I typically enjoy more sexual tension in a romance novel, I believe someone who enjoys sapphic romance and with a twist of drama will enjoy this book. So let me stop here for a moment and ask you to share your thoughts on what you believe the lessons are here for things to include in a book review. Share your thoughts with others in the chat. I'm going to share my thoughts with you right now. Let me just share my screen again. These are my takeaways from what should be included in a book review. Be kind, share a high-level synopsis, state why you think it's a good or a bad review, but do it kindly. You can do it kindly and be constructive. And we'll be sharing some techniques on that in a moment. Offer context to a star rating and share your overall conclusion and who you'd recommend it for. Now, this next slide is from Serena Bishop. It's a true gift. She gave me permission to share her template for a book review. Look at this wonderful creation. I found this so helpful. Just to offer an example of how a review might turn out using this template, I drafted a quick review based on it. So let me share it with you. I'll read through it as you follow along on the slide. I learned about The Glass Castle, a memoir by Jeanette Walls from my university when they featured it as their freshman book experience piece. And I'm so thrilled that I read it. This book had family, conflict, love, and sadness in it. I think my favorite part of the book was the way the writer told the story of her father through the lens of love, despite the hellish choices he made. For example, she always portrayed him in a light that made me think she felt sorry for him, like no one would for someone they loved and couldn't help. I felt so emotional when I read this. If I had to offer one criticism, I would say the book ended too soon because I really had no criticism for it. But anyway, overall, I would recommend this book, especially to a reader who does like family drama and comeback stories. So now let's go back to Sarah to consider what things to avoid in a book review. It's been several months now, and Sarah has stopped checking the reviews daily. She's busy writing her next novel, and she doesn't have time for that. But one morning she decides to peek. She sees a 1-star review with the title, "Terrible," in all caps. Her heart sinks. Her skin becomes prickly. The room sways, all those things that happen when you're emotional. She takes a deep breath to attempt to reduce her sudden trembling. She braves forward and clicks into the review. The reviewer practically wrote a novel herself with the review. It was so long. And she gave away her entire plot, even sharing the climax when her character meets her destiny and must make a life-changing decision. She left no detail out. Rather than tell readers the book had an unexpected twist, she revealed the unexpected twist. Actually, she revealed all of them. And to make matters worse, this reviewer was a friend of hers on Facebook and tagged her in a public post on both her timeline and in several literary groups. As you can imagine, Sarah tossed her laptop to the side of her on the couch and bowed her head and felt the full blow of that reviewer telling the whole Facebook world that she sucked as a writer. Sarah wondered how this person would feel if she had spent almost an entire year of her life writing a book just to have someone destroy all of her efforts to anyone willing to read her scathing words. So let me stop here for a moment and ask you to share your thoughts on what you believe the lessons are here for things to not include in a book review. I would tell you, here are my thoughts on that. So let me share my screen one more time here and give you my thoughts. Say a plot has an unexpected twist rather than revealing what happened. Don't include spoilers. Don't tag authors in a negative review. Thank you to Lee Winter for that. It's a really good point. And do think about how you'd feel if you received a review like this before writing one. So those are my thoughts so far. What I want to do now is I want to bring Cindy Rizzo on screen with me. Hello, Cindy.
Hey, Suzie.
It is so good to have you here. I'm so happy. Thank you
Great
for being
here.
So, Cindy, my question to you is, how would you provide constructive feedback in a book review? If a book is not Exactly stellar, especially in the case of a fellow writer who may have requested you to review their book.
Well, it's happened. A lot of times I read advanced review copies. In fact, there's a Facebook page for ARCs, Sapphic fiction ARCs, and it's a place I go pretty often. But I also read a lot of books that aren't advanced review copies, and I review every book that I read. So that's a lot of books and a lot of reviews.
That is a lot.
Yeah. I think that it's one thing if you know the author or there's someone like in our community of authors, but if you're specifically asked by someone to review, that even hypes it up to a different level, because then you know they're waiting and, you know, all of that. And I actually tell folks that I've reviewed their book and posted it once I have. I always try to emphasize what I did like in a book. I usually have a plot synopsis in my book reviews only because I forget what the book is about after reading so many books over such a long period of time. And then a book comes up and I'm like, did I read this? And then I look and I'm like, oh yeah, that's the one, blah, blah, blah. And so I do include positive aspects of the book. And I think it's important, especially if you are a writer yourself, to sympathize with the difficulties. You know, I know world building can be really hard, or I know it's really hard to move through this kind of conflict of character, or to deal with issues of abuse, or whatever it is that, you know, you didn't think was done all that great, but is not an easy thing to do in the first place. So I think to say that gives the writer some sense that you're empathizing with the difficulty of whatever it is that you're not finding worked all that well. And I think certainly, and a lot of this you've already talked about, Suzie, is to be constructive about what, you know, we always say when we're talking about evaluation at work, what worked, what didn't work. And I think that what didn't work is you have to, you know, mention it, but be constructive about it. So there are things that I think are really important aspects of fiction that you can talk about. Character development, the arc of a character, the setting of the book, the plot of a book, and the credibility of what aspects of the plot. If something just didn't seem like, I just read a book where I liked the book a lot and I actually gave it a high rating, but there was one aspect that just, it didn't ring true to me. And I mentioned that. I said, look, I don't think in the real world this would happen in this setting. And those are really important things. And I think that authors learn from those. So I think those are, you know, some of the things that you can mention that feel constructive and are very much about the craft of fiction. I think if you really know the person and you have been asked, you could warn them ahead of time and say, look, I had some problems with this book. Do you want me to post a review? You know, I'll hold back if you feel weird about it. I'm happy to talk to you and give you the review privately of what I thought. It's really up to you to decide what it is. And then in that case also to say, you know, I beta read a lot of books, which I do. And I'm really happy to beta read your books in the future. In this way, you might be able to catch some things at an earlier point where you can make changes. And this kind of feedback is more helpful in a beta read than it is in an actual review, especially on that specific book. Some things that you should avoid, in addition to everything you already mentioned, Suzie, about spoilers and, you know, saying all the things. I've seen reviews on Goodreads, and Goodreads is particularly not great, and people call it mean reads. And people do all sorts of things on Goodreads, and they'll 1-star or 2-star a book because they don't like, I don't usually read YA books. and I'm going to give this 1 or 2 stars. Like, that's not a reason to slam the book. It's about you and what you like reading and don't like reading. It's one thing to say, I don't usually like YA, I don't usually read YA, but boy, this book really blew me away. It was fabulous. That's fine to say, but not to say, I don't usually read young adults, so this isn't really my cup of tea, 1 star. You know, I mean,
Absolutely.
That's not the author's fault at all. And also to get personal about somebody, or to slam someone personally about who they are or what, or to talk about all their books in that one review. I think, you know, that unless you say something like, wow, I read her debut, I loved it, I'm so glad that this book was published, the second book, I really loved it, I see, you know, the growth in this author. And, you know, to say those things positively is one thing. To say them negatively, it just isn't helpful. And it's more about the person writing it and what they're venting about than anything that anyone, even who's interested in reading the book and looking at the reviews, can learn anything from. So that's your audience, the other people who are trying to decide whether to buy a book or, you know, get it out of the library or whatever it is however they read. So that's everything I think I was going to say, the main points, although I'm happy to take those kinds of questions as a follow-up after we give Karin some airtime.
Wow, Cindy, that was everything you said. I agree with 100%. And I really like the idea of, you know, when you mentioned that you sometimes, if you really had problems with the book, you respect the author enough to let them know on the sidelines, look, I had problems with the book. Would you like to hear those problems? I can hold off on publishing this. That is really helpful. And hopefully authors who are in here listening to this, if that happens to you, take people up on that offer, because that is a gift. That's your way of growing, because I don't care if you've written 2 books or 50 books, we all have something to learn still. And it's a craft that continues to refine itself over time and over a lifespan. And, you know, sometimes we're just going to have those moments where we forget things in a book and we blow some things in a book. But it's really helpful to hear that from somebody. So don't be afraid of it. Don't shy away from it. Cindy, thank you so much for these insights. It's really helpful. I think that I'm looking at the chat and it looks like people are really resonating with what you're saying. So thank you so much. I'm very grateful that you came on here.
Thanks for
about it. All right. So now let's have Karin Kallmaker. Hello, Karin.
Hello. I'm here.
Wonderful to have you here.
I've been taking notes like crazy.
Awesome. I know I'm telling you, what Cindy just said was so helpful. And I can't wait to hear from you. So my question to you is, what tips do you have on how to grow from a critical review?
Well, I would echo a lot of what you said. First of all, when I have a new book out, it is irresistible to check the reviews every day. You just do it. Even as you're telling yourself, just don't do that. Stop it. You have other work to write. Stop it. Stop it. You can't stop, right? At least not me. So I'll do that, and hopefully there'll be positive reviews, and those are all good for the ego. And this is a little graphic, but you know, those are basically lube, and my muse is a slut. She loves them. Bring the 5-star reviews. I don't care what the content is, but we love that. But when I'm, a book's been out for a while and people start to actually feel like they have the space to be more critical, because there's always that rush of reviewers who want to be on there the first day and they have positive reviews. And then the more negative reviews are a little slower to come. And I know that. So I make a conscious decision to go and read reviews at that point. And I put on that editing hat, take off the writer hat, the one that's all vulnerable and squishy, and put on the editor hat so that you've got some fortitude. And at that point, I try to divide the reviews up into groups. Take away the star rating. That's very distracting. That graphic grabs your eye and it can shift your whole attention to the words of the review. So most reviews fall into, I'm using the American coin system, which, sorry, everyone else in the world, but it's the one I know and I can never adapt to other systems. But most reviews are, they're nickels, dimes, and quarters. They're good. They add up. They're good for the psychic bank. They're generally positive. You get the pennies. That's the Charles reviews, the homophobes, the mean reviews. They're pennies. I put them in a bag. It takes a lot of pennies to buy a stick of gum. But I generally just think, well, just put that away. It's of no use to me whatsoever. I can't get anything with those. There's nothing to learn from those. And then there's the handful of dollars, the silver dollars that have teachable moments. And I don't get enough of those. I don't think any writer gets enough of those. And I would urge all reviewers to not shy away from giving teachable moments. Offer the feedback in a way that doesn't attack the author's intentions or the author's openness. Don't be personal about it. And if you avoid that, you're on your way to doing it kindly and professionally. The author's a professional, and even though reviewers don't get paid, you should probably in some cases, given the amount of work some people do. But we're professionals. So it's actually a very good feeling when someone takes the time to treat you like a professional and give you feedback that says you could do this better. So that's when I approach reviews, it's like the pennies go in a bag and I get rid of them. But I'm looking always for the silver dollar reviews. And sometimes, like you pointed out, Suzie, a silver dollar review can be a 1-star review. It can also be a 5-star review that has critical, I love this book. I had all the feels. I was really in it. But at chapter 27, I got lost in where I was in time. That tells you that, oops, maybe you messed up your flashback, toolkit in some way. Nobody's perfect. Everybody can benefit from some little bit of, I could have used, or this would have worked better for me, or, oh, I didn't care for that part, but overall I loved this book. So you can still put those nuggets, those teachable things in a 5-star review. It doesn't have to hurt that overall rating. And I think it's also important to note that the rating system, that 5-star system, there's the monetary aspect of that, and that a high rating helps the author sell their book. That comes into the play of, reviews are for readers and they're sometimes for writers, but for writers, they're also about being able to make money at our craft. So, and the other thing, I think it's just a comment from the chat, is that I think it's important to divide as a reviewer when I'm giving somebody feedback on a book unofficially, it's not a print review, to divide my likes from the book itself. As Cindy was saying, for someone to say, I don't like YA and this book was awful. What the heck? I just want to go, get out of my life. I don't need that. But to step back and say, okay, this is not my cup of tea. This kind of story is just not my cup of tea. But these are the positive things of the story. This is the way the story worked. And to work past our likes and dislikes and get into being a little more distant ourselves, if you intend to offer negative criticism. So, and I don't even like the word negative. I much prefer critical.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's funny you say that, because I remember doing a podcast episode with Ann Roberts a while back on constructive feedback. And she said, and I approached the topic, calling it critical feedback. And she goes, I like the word constructive better.
Constructive.
And I'm like, you know what? Ever since she said that, I'm like, yeah, that's actually, it's so true. So I just find that interesting. Then the word negative is just negative review, this or that. It's, yeah, definitely a negative, right?
Right.
Now, I know that you mentioned that you have one piece of advice for people when it comes to owning content.
Owning your content. And this one is for the reviewers. I've been around long enough to know people who had their entire body of reviews scrubbed off a site, just in a flick. Amazon deleted all of their reviews, and so did Goodreads, and so that content just disappeared because they didn't have a copy of it. I would urge everyone who's writing reviews not to compose them in a browser window on a site. Compose them in a word processing document, save them to your own drive, and then copy and paste. You may not know that as soon as you paste it on any social media site, that site owns that copy, and they can do anything they want with it. So own your content, keep a copy of your content, keep it locally, store it in the cloud. And I'd urge any reviewer to put together your own blog. They're free. You can have one up and running really quickly. It'll look attractive. It's not going to bring a lot of traffic. I don't want to sell it from that standpoint. It doesn't replace your communities on Goodreads and Amazon or wherever, but it gives you a place on the web to point to and say, this is my body of work. Writers have bodies of work. I think reviewers have bodies of work. And it would allow someone who's interested in your body of work to get to know you in one place. Goodreads allows that a little bit. Amazon is really bad at that. Goodreads reviews an author can link to directly, but you can't link to an Amazon review. You can only make a screen snap and share it that way. But if it's on a blog, you can share a link to that review. You can also, on your book jacket, quote a review that says it's from the Books and Beignet blog versus Kindle customer. Just looks a lot better. So I encourage, if you review a lot, make your own space on the web and keep it yours.
Oh, I love that. Oh, that's really great advice for reviewers. Wow, absolutely. So reviewers, take note. That's just really great advice. I love it. And I love the advice you gave to writers as well, and how to grow from reviews, how not to get derailed from them. So thank you so much, Karin.
Oh, you are welcome.
Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. All right. So what I'm going to do now is let me share. This is just sort of like a visual refresh of some of the things that Karin and Cindy brought to light in their answers and what their responses were. And so let's just review some of the main ways, again, that you can grow from reviews. So constructive feedback is just that. It's feedback. And it's somebody else's thoughtful opinion, or maybe not thoughtful, but it's somebody else's opinion, and it's their opinion, and they own it, and they can do whatever they want with it. So just keep that in mind, that it doesn't mean it has to be personal for you. Bad reviews can actually convince people that your other reviews are real, right? If you have a whole bunch of 5-star reviews, people might start to wonder, did all her friends and family write reviews? Are these real? So that's another way of just being able to make it more credible. Having a couple that aren't 5 stars is okay. If it's mean-spirited, just let go of it. I know it's easier said than done. I mean, it took me a month to get over one, but it really is the most healthy thing that you can do. It's a healthy choice, and it is your choice as a writer to let go of something that's mean-spirited. It's not going to serve you or your future readers. So just let go of it. Eat some chocolate. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this? That is, it all comes down to having really great questions in life. Being able to be successful at something is asking the right questions, really good questions, questions that your brain is going to go onto a hunt to find the answers for. So when you ask your brain, what can I learn from this? That brain of yours, beautiful brain, is going to go seeking the answer to that. Ask if there's any value. Anything that was said in that review, even if it was mean-spirited, is there something that has value to it? Can I apply this feedback to my next piece of work? And reviewers, this is the same for you in terms of when you're writing your review, think about some of the things that you can, if you are there writing for the writer as well as the reader, think about how you can structure your review in a way that will be helpful to the writer to be able to improve their craft, so that when you pick up another book of theirs, it's going to be that much better. So you're helping the cycle of the literary world. Ask if it has merit. And then this is a big one. Is my ego getting in the way and blocking me from learning a valuable lesson here in my craft? And then how not to get derailed. It's not personal. These people don't even know you. Most of them. I mean, sometimes they know you, but for the most part, the people that review my books on Amazon and Goodreads, I don't know who they are. And if it's bad, the good ones, I know who they are. They're usually just supporters and people who have been reading my books. But the bad reviewers, I don't know who they are. It's not personal. It may not even be about you. It may have, something in your book may have triggered them to say what they said. View it. I know this is going to be difficult, but view it through the lens of gratitude. Go into any review with the intention of being grateful for it, good or bad. Look at it through the lens of gratitude, because it will help to soften the blow if it's a hurtful one. Okay, here's something that helps. At times, feeling hurt or anger is going to be inevitable. And burying your feelings is not helpful. Just like when you go through grief, it's not helpful to bury those feelings. Therefore, you can write out your feelings, let them out creatively, and then move on. Write a response using all the emotions that you feel. Get it out of your system. Let it marinate. Write it over and over again until all the emotions are out of your system and on paper. I'm not saying share this. I'm saying this is for your eyes only. By exploring it in this manner, you effectively are placing yourself in the seat of opportunity to let go of the review. It's Psychology 101. If you notice that this person was mean-spirited, you are affirming this by writing it out, and the process of letting go is substantially greater than if you let it sit and rot inside of you. And after you've come to terms with all of this, let it go, erase the response, or toss it in the trash and move forward. Never actually follow through with sending it. This was just a reflection exercise meant only for you to be able to heal from it. Another thing is to keep on writing. Don't stop writing. Don't do what I did. Keep writing. Sort out what's not useful. Karin highlighted this fact. Give yourself positive self-talk and a treat. Chocolate, like I said, always helps. Admit it hurts. Move on. Always look for the lessons. So some of these are repetitive, but I want to get the point across to you. And so that right there are the do's and don'ts of book reviews, whether you're receiving them, whether you're writing them. All of these things are just hopefully very helpful to you, and you're able to walk away with some answers. That wonderful template from Serena Bishop, use that. If you don't know how to write a review, that's a really great place to start. It just lines up everything that is really great in a constructive review, okay? Ways to get more reviews. All right, the easiest way to get book reviews is to ask for them. What better place to do that than in your book itself? Usually it's best, though, to keep it, just include a short, direct review request towards the back of the book, since good reviewers tend to read all the way to the end. Now, there are unethical ways to ask, and you should avoid them. For starters, don't say, if you really loved my book, please leave a review. I know that authors say this all the time, but it can be presumptuous. You don't want to do that. It's like telling somebody that their opinion doesn't matter unless it's glowing. It's better to ask readers, I'd love to hear your honest opinion. That can go one way or the other. But by saying that, you're asking for that feedback, and that's going to help you grow. Ask bloggers or podcasters to review your book. Send them a copy. You have to know your audience. So look at book bloggers who might have some knowledge in your area, or podcasters who might be interested in your book's topic. If anybody has any suggestions as to podcasts that cater to this, put it in the chat for people who don't know. Podcasters are constantly looking for guests to interview. Of course, good reads or mean reads. I agree. Mean reads, that's a really good way to put it. Absolutely. Anyway, Goodreads, as you likely know, is a social media site for book lovers and their book giveaways. Some authors have found that it's a good way to increase their exposure and create hype. Goodreads requires participants to add the book to their wish list. And they also remind winners to leave reviews. So, they offer several packages at different price points, depending on how many promotional options that you want. So that's an option. And my final one is BookBub. BookBub features discounted books in their daily newsletters, which have more than 10 million subscribers. And this may have increased by who knows? It's always increasing. You may have to pay for your book to be featured, or you can buy ad space in the newsletters. And the pricing really depends on how deep the book's discount is. So those are four ideas to get more reviews. I hope that was helpful. Margaret, can you define a high-level synopsis versus when a reviewer gives the whole plot? You don't want to get too much into the weeds of the plot. You don't want to give away any of the unexpected twists, the subplots, things like that, because those are the author puts those into the book to help excite the reader and to help throw them off a little bit when they're reading the book. So you don't want to ruin those surprises. Think high level, think book synopsis. Think about when you're reading the jacket copy on somebody's book, or, you know, how it doesn't give away the entire plot. It just gives away what the book is about. And so think about an elevator pitch. You know, if somebody asks you, oh, you know, you read The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls, what was it about? And so, you know, think about how you would put that into a paragraph format. So just the overall theme, maybe some lessons learned, something about the characters and their arc throughout, but don't give away the nitty gritty details. Let that be for the reader to explore and discover on their own. Angela, what about if the review criticisms, the feedback are all over the place? There is no pattern. How can you learn from that? Well, I mean, you know, sometimes when I read sometimes beta feedback, it's all over the place. It really is up to you as the author to be the organized person there and take the parts that are important to you that you can learn from, that you understand, because maybe there are some points you're never going to understand that somebody made because they just didn't get their point across. And that's just the way it works. But my advice is take a notepad and a pen, and anything that resonates with you as a point that you can learn something from, write it down. That's how I would look at it. I hope that answers your question. Jessica, should you mention the author's English mistakes? Not a problem with the story, but if there are loads of English mistakes, for example, ending a sentence with a preposition, no commas, starting a sentence with and, but, or, etc. Oh, Karin is going to answer this question live. There you go, Karin.
There
Let's
I
do
am.
it. All right.
You know, this is, I think every reviewer has a right to draw that line wherever that line falls. If that kind of thing bothers you and you mention it, the thing is, people who are also bothered by it will appreciate it. And the people who don't care will go, oh, that doesn't count against the book. They'll still be interested. So why not bring it up? But keep in mind, too, that some writers have a style that can often violate English rules. Ending a sentence with a preposition, for example. I put and at the beginning of a sentences a lot. And they changed the comma rules on me halfway through my career. So I'm out.
I love it. That's funny. Yeah, so true. That's a great answer. Karin, do you have anything else to say to Angela about if the feedback is all over the place, there is no pattern, how can you learn from that?
Oh, well, I describe it as, because I've had that where I've got 5 different sort of, feedback points in there. None of them are the same. I look for the one that sort of resonates, that I hear a little bell that I recognize as, oh, I didn't even think of that. And even though there's no pattern to them, 3 of them might do that. And 2, I go, I just don't know what to do with that. And it doesn't help in a future book. I can't do anything about fixing the old, the book that's out. So I just tend to let those go. Avoid giving any single review too much weight. Try to keep things in balance. You want a good loaf of bread, not one that's too much flour or too much yeast.
That's great. Thank you so much. Stay on, Karin, because we're coming to a close and I want to have both of you on. Lynn Dennison, I think I'm allergic to semicolons. I love it. So it is, look at us. We made it right to the hour. Oh, we have one more. Okay, one more question. Example, the book is actually quite good. Oh, here's an example that somebody wants to. Mary Reeds says, the book is actually quite good. The characters too, but there are lengths in the plot and artificial plot extensions. My feeling a little shorter would be better. I can't give 4 or 5 stars. That wouldn't be fair for the 4 or 5 star books. What would be a good way to solve this? Oh,
I mean, that's a toughie. Like I said earlier, the star ratings, that graphic actually has to do with the marketing, the saleability of the book, because Amazon uses that average number to decide how much to recommend it to other people. So maybe as a reviewer, it'd be useful to also divorce yourself from using those as absolutes. I would tend to round up But I've seen a lot of reviews where someone rounds up, they say 4 stars, and then the very first thing will say, actually 3.5. And then they'll list the feedback that they have. So that kind of compromises and meets the author's needs a little bit for that rating, and your need to be honest about how you felt about the book.
Yeah, and if it's a 3-star book, it's a 3-star book.
It's a 3-star book, exactly.
There was some good stuff and some stuff that wasn't so great. And but I agree. I think rounding up is always a nice thing to do when you can.
Yeah, that's really great advice. Both of you gave such great advice. Oh, you have something else?
There was a question from I think it was Angela. It said, do reviews really matter? And I think they do. I just saw something Haley Cass posted that said, those who wait got 6,000 reviews. It's like, that made me like go, whoa, so, and a lot of places will promote a book by saying, 5,000 reviews on Goodreads, that kind of thing. So a lot of times those books that get a lot of reviews do get, more visibility. And it just is what it is. It also means you've done well reaching a broad audience. And, 6,000 reviews, that means a lot of people read that book. So that's got to mean something.
Absolutely. Because
I don't know, Karin, if you ever thought about like how helpful reviews are to that kind of thing.
I started writing at a time when we got newsletters from bookstores, and NIAD copied it. If you were mentioned in a bookstore newsletter, NIAD copied it and you ended up with a copy months later. So I'm just used to the idea of this distant thing that has nothing to do with me happening in a place in the world where I've never been, and people responding to my work. It taught me that how a book is experienced by the reader isn't about me, and I have no control over that. You just don't. So, but I found that feedback always really useful. They didn't pull their punches. I learned a lot, and I miss that. I miss that connection. I find reviews really useful. They're also they're vital for marketing in today's world. They really are, to have a number of reviews. And earlier, as we said that, we really don't like reviews that don't have any content. My feeling about that is I don't like the 1-star reviews with no content. That feels like to me just a cheat. Those are the mean reviews. But all of those 5-star reviews from somebody who finished the book and tapped that star review, they matter. They matter a lot, because having a quantity of reviews as well as content of reviews, it changes your entire marketing trajectory of your book. So it's kind of sad that those two things, the feedback loop and the marketing loop, are so heavily entwined. But that's the world we live in.
That is the world we live in. Before we close, I want to make sure that everybody knows that we have a regional event taking place in Jersey City on March 18th, and Cindy is going to be at that event. So if you are in the area, if you can make it, do it, go. It'll be so fun. Have a great time. All right. So that brings us to the conclusion of this whole presentation. What I really want to make sure that, people understand is that not only did we provide you with reinforcement on a new way to experience book reviews, but in what other ways can you apply what you learned today? Here's my take on this. This information on how to receive or give constructive feedback can be applied to most all aspects of your life. The better you become at offering and receiving valuable constructive feedback, the more successful you will be at navigating the often complex world, and the more astute you will become at being that beautiful mind of yours, keeping that beautiful mind of yours open to learning new ways of seeing the world. So stay open to feedback, seek it out, be kind and honest when you're delivering it, follow the golden rule, which is to treat other people as you would want to be treated yourself. And if you can implement this method of showing up to the feedback cycle, I believe you will experience life in a more mindful and productive manner. So thank you, everybody, for being here with us today. We hope that you enjoyed it, and we'll see you at the next virtual series next month. Take care, everyone. Thanks again, Cindy and Karin.